there! My name is Tori and you are listening to The Unclassical Musician, the podcast empowering the new generation of classical musicians to take risks and live a fulfilling life. Each week, we dive in headfirst into a topic on the minds of young professional musicians and come out the other side with a new perspective on life as an artist. Hello, dear listeners. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time you may be listening to this. I hope you're doing well, and thank you for choosing to have my little voice in your ear as you go about your day today. I hope that you find my little voice useful and helpful. Today, we're going to be talking about dealing with a performance-related injury. For me, obviously, I can only talk about my personal experience with a performance-related injury. And the injury that I have struggled with over the years is TMJ, which I think some people would argue is not actually a performance-induced injury. It's more of a symptom of anxiety. Next week, we will be talking about anxiety. But today, we're going to be talking about how I have dealt with TMJ and its impact on my music making. If you're interested, a lot of the material that I'm drawing from today actually comes from two blog posts that I wrote on my website back in, I think, 2018. So a couple of years removed from the actual writing of these blog posts, and it's been interesting to go back and reread them. But a lot of the core information I still feel like pretty strongly about. So today might feel a little bit like a dramatic reading of a blog post, and that's because it is. But if you want to actually read the blog posts, I will link them in the show notes. So you have that physical thing to go back and read if you would like. My TMJ issues began way back when I was a sophomore in music school. It hit me right before my petition to major or barrier jury. I'm sure many of you listening have had to go through a petition to major or a barrier jury process in order to graduate from music school. I went to DePaul University in Chicago for my undergrad, and our petition to major happens at the end of your sophomore year. Towards the end of your sophomore year, you get this one opportunity to prove to a jury of professors that you have what it takes to make it as a professional in the music business and finish your degree. I felt so much pressure going into this jury situation. The pressure came partly from my applied professor, who was the person preparing me for the exam like the whole year, right? But also from other students, because all of the performance majors have to go through this petition to major process. And there's so much gossip revolving around the whole petition to major thing. Like, so-and-so didn't pass last year and they have to do it again this year. Or did you hear about what happened during the clarinet jury? Like, so-and-so totally did a face plant on their concerto. They're worried they're not going to pass, etc. It just would go on. And all of the petitions to major happened like within a month of each other. So there's just like a huge bubble of anxiety that these impressionable 19, 20-year-olds are just living in. And I know that that's partly what college is, but that's kind of it's a prolonged period of time to be under that kind of stress, right? And if you know me, I'm a worrier. So I worried long and hard about my petition to major. For all you flutists out there, I'm just going to run through the requirements for a moment so that you can have that in your headspace for reference as you're listening. We had to play Reichert number 1 with the tempo dotted quarter note equals 116, pretty fast. And we had to do the flat keys all slurred and the sharp keys all double-tongued. And we had to play the exposition of a Mozart concerto, both the first movement and the second movement. We also had to learn 2 movements of the Muchinsky Sonata, plus 1 other piece of your choosing, and 5 major excerpts, including Firebird and Daphnis and Chloe. And this is also with piano. Or the concerto, the Muchinsky, and the third piece were all with the piano, at least. When I go back to reading this list, I can say, yeah, it's doable and an acceptable degree of difficulty for a petition to major. I feel like that they weren't expecting too much of us. But now, 8 years removed from the process, I can say, yeah, that was a lot of music to have prepared to a very, very high level, like the highest level that you've prepared anything up to that point as a sophomore in college. So, overachieving, type A flute personality me locked herself away and practiced more than I had ever practiced in my entire life. And I stressed out and I worried, which is anxiety. I practiced more, couldn't sleep because of the anxiety, practiced some more, worried some more. And then one day in choir rehearsal, because I was in choir all the way through my junior year of college, I think. So one day in choir, I realized I couldn't open my mouth tall enough to make the right vowel sound that I was going for. Like I physically couldn't open my mouth far enough. And I heard crackling in my ears when I chewed even soft foods. And my face, like my facial muscles felt very fatigued after practicing only very minimal amounts, like 30 minutes. And every time I yawned, my jaw popped out of place. And I had to very gingerly make sure that it popped back in place when I closed my mouth. So obviously, I knew that this was not a good thing. One of my best friends, not a professional musician, had TMJ pretty bad, and I was worried that this was it. So I made an appointment with my dentist. He confirmed my worst fears. I had moderate TMJ disorder. So for those of you who don't know what TMJ is, TMJ actually stands for the temporomandibular joint disorder. So it should be TMJD, but everyone has a temporomandibular joint. It's the jaw joint where your jaw connects into your head. And its street name is lockjaw or just TMJ. So TMJD, or you can call it TMD in musicians, is often an overuse injury caused by muscles holding the jaw in a certain position for extended periods of time. I had never heard of another flutist with this issue before. Carpal tunnel is by far way more common in the flute world, but that's an entirely different part of the body. And I felt like I couldn't tell anyone about this until I consulted with my applied teacher. And I felt very, very alone. at this time. So my dentist, the one who diagnosed me, he made me a hard plastic mouth guard to wear to bed at night, which is very not sexy. I complained about waking up with headaches, so he figured that I was grinding and clenching my teeth at night while I slept. And then he also prescribed muscle relaxers to take before bed to get my jaw to calm down. And with those two things, the hard plastic night guard and the muscle relaxers, made it so that I wouldn't wake up with headaches anymore. So that was good. I mean, I should hope not. If you're taking muscle relaxers right before you go to bed, I would hope that you sleep pretty well and don't wake up with a headache. So at this point, it was only a couple weeks before the flute juries, and I told my teacher about the issues that I was having. She treated it kind of like the kiss of death and a curse on my career as a professional musician if I even make it that far. But she did give me permission to take it easy and not worry so much about the petition. I was simultaneously terrified and also relieved. I was terrified that my career may be over before it even starts, and also relieved that my teacher was understanding enough to not push me any harder than I already pushed myself. So the muscle relaxer prescription carried me until just after the petition to major. No spoilers here. Of course, I passed. The whole flute class did. I remember being relieved again, but still questioning kind of whether the panel took it easy on me because of my injury. Like, the whole flute faculty was there, you know. I honestly can't remember how I played. I honestly can't remember how I played. I guess I blocked it out. After the muscle relaxers, my dentist was able to prescribe me physical therapy to help regain full use of my jaw muscles. I know, it sounds kind of ridiculous. Like, what the heck does jaw physical therapy even look like? And how can a dentist prescribe physical therapy? I don't know how a dentist can prescribe physical therapy, but he did. So, jaw physical therapy looks like massaging the scalp, the face, the neck, the inner cheeks, and the jaw tissue. Yes, so my physical therapist would stick her gloved hand inside my mouth and massage my insides of my cheeks and press on the tissue that covers the jaw joint. It's very intimate, but it feels incredible. The massages, honestly, were the highlight of my twice weekly physical therapy visits. And I was also prescribed exercises to strengthen my upper body, specifically my shoulders and my chest. And I was told to not participate in any kind of strenuous physical activity that could cause me to clench my jaw, like running or lifting weights. Just the light exercises from my therapist that I was meant to do at home every day. That's the only type of exercise I was allowed to do. So if you read between the lines here, you can infer some very fundamental issues with my life as a classical musician, as a sophomore in college. One, playing the flute was obviously the most important thing in my life. More important than exercise, mental health, any kind of self-care at all. There was none. There was no self-care at that point in my life. I also had some serious self-confidence issues that manifested themselves as anxiety. Also, my flute technique was poor, and I practiced poor technique for 5 hours a day for months leading up to this one exam. I was compensating for poor technique by using muscles that were too weak to do the job. I didn't even have enough upper body strength to play with good posture and good technique at the same time. While the night guard, the pills, the physical therapy, the massages, it all helped a lot, but they did not cure my TMJ disorder. Months later, like next school year, winter, the most I could practice in a day would be like 3 hours tops. I couldn't physically play for more than 5 hours a day. So that's including rehearsals. So if you have a 2-hour large ensemble rehearsal and then a 1-hour chamber music rehearsal, that only leaves 2 hours of physical practice time. And I was taking ibuprofen before long rehearsals to help with the inflammation. Looking back, like, oh my God, thank goodness I didn't ruin my stomach with the amount of ibuprofen I was taking. I might pay for that later. I hope not, but it was a lot of ibuprofen. I had 2 rounds of physical therapy plus weekly TMJ massages with the massage therapist for the Chicago Fire, which, if you don't know, the Chicago Fire is the Chicago men's soccer team. He was very good. And I had this physical therapy and the massages for months after the health insurance stopped covering the physical therapy because it wasn't over yet. So was my teacher right? Was this going to be a thing I'm going to have to deal with for the rest of my life? Is it worth it? Is it literally worth all of the money that my family had already put into 2.5 years of a music degree? With the petition to major being a thing in the past, and my jaw slowly making its way back to some semblance of normalcy, I left for a flute class overseas. And before embarking on this adventure, my teacher at the time, a different teacher from when I was studying for the performance exam, my teacher impressed upon me that I was not to tell anyone at this class about my jaw. We couldn't have word getting out there that I was damaged goods, or else I wouldn't get into grad school the next year. While at this class, I learned that one of my flute idols, a superstar in the American flute world, suffered with a serious case of TMJ right at the beginning of their career. They had just won a job, and they were obviously feeling those pressures that come with a job very intensely enough to develop TMJ. This person went on to have a remarkable career as a performer and a teacher. So I saw this light and I straight out sprinted towards it with everything I had. It is possible. If they can do it, I can do it. All is not lost for me. I was so relieved, again, that I could talk to a real life professional about this without being made to feel like my life was over. So I disobeyed my teacher, but it felt right to do it. Ended up not getting to study with this flute idol for grad school. Was it because they knew too much? Was my teacher right? I don't know. There's no way of knowing. So even though I was finally able to vent that frustration regarding my performance injury to someone out loud, even though I was able to get that 10-ton weight off my chest, I wore my teacher's words like a wet wool cloak for years. Damaged goods. That one phrase did enough damage to the goods in my head to take me down a few more pegs, if you know what I'm saying. I didn't even tell my teacher in grad school about my TMJ, half because it was slowly but surely becoming a non issue, but also half out of the fear of the judgment that I might have received. Maybe another half out of the fear of having to start my playing over from scratch as a master's student. Now I am 3 years removed from academia, and I can say with some degree of certainty that my TMJ was caused not just by overuse and anxiety, but also by poor technique. And honestly, I was never taught technique as a young flutist. I had a decent sound and really good fingers, so no one ever tried to rip me down and rebuild me from scratch. Now that I've had to be my own teacher for a while, I have been able to finally synthesize all the information that my various instructors had been filling my brain with over the years. And now that I teach youngsters how to play the flute every single day, I've had to be very honest with myself about my own technique, because you can't teach good technique unless you have good technique. So it was a lot of slow going and stopping when it doesn't feel good and not practicing when I didn't want to practice. A lot of practice in front of a mirror. A lot of listening back to recordings of myself playing. Lots of body awareness, mental awareness, self-care and empathy, and gratitude for this journey. Because whether it's 30 minutes or 5 hours, at the end of the day, I'm still here playing my flute. Somehow, I didn't give up, and I still love it. I'm happy to say now that TMJ is almost completely a non-issue, but keeping in mind that I've had to deal with it for, when I was a sophomore, I was like 19 or 20, and I'm about to be 28. So it's been in my life for 8 years. It's a long time. I still wear my night guard to bed every single night because it helps. And I don't chew gum. I don't miss not chewing gum. Or I don't miss chewing gum. I don't miss chewing gum. The things that have helped me a lot with keeping my TMJ in check have been physical activity, big time. Big time. That was actually something that one flute player who everyone in the American flute world looks up to, what they had said about managing TMJ is to make sure that you're getting enough exercise to help burn off the extra adrenaline that comes from the anxiety. So finding an outlet for the anxiety, for me, that became running. As soon as my physical therapist gave me the okay, I started running again. And that was great for me. Nowadays, it's Orange Theory. Not a sponsor, but hey, Orange Theory. And I would not recommend anyone starting off with something that's so intense as Orange Theory Fitness. You can't go from not exercising to Orange Theory. Like, it doesn't work that way. It took a while to get to that point. But if you are someone who struggles with anxiety, performance-related anxiety, or just general anxiety in general, you're going to want to come back and listen next week when we go into some information about that. If you have any helpful tips or tricks to musicians out there who might be dealing with a performance-related injury, feel free to join the Unclassical Musicians Facebook group, link in the show notes, and share. Would love to hear from you. I really hope that you're doing well with it now, those of you out there listening. If you don't already, You're going to want to follow me on Instagram at Tori Flutist for lots of podcast updates. I would say I do most of my podcast updates there. I want to be better about the Facebook group. But if you're not already a member of the Unclassical Musicians Facebook group, just go ahead and request. And if you look like a musician, I will let you in. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts and you enjoyed this episode, please take 2 seconds and leave me a nice star rating and make sure that you're subscribed so that you get episodes downloaded straight to your phone every Tuesday morning. And if you have more than 2 seconds and would like to leave me a review, I would super appreciate it. And I think that's all I have for today, folks. So I'll see you next week. We're almost done with these heavy-hitting openers. We're going to be done with them by the end of the year. Oh my God, 2020 is almost over. Yay. Okay, I'll see you next week.